here. Is this okay here, or is this a problem? What if I put it here? If I start writing too low on the board, and yeah, this class period, if I start writing too low on this board, stop me. Or just tell me, if I write below this, is that too low for you guys? Is that a problem? Is okay, I'm sorry, is this okay? If I'm from here up, like the top 2/3 of the board? Okay, if I get carried away and I keep going, please just remind me and stop me. I don't mind. I would appreciate you doing that rather than not being able to see something. So for 24, there's a table that shows the latitudes and longitudes of 5 major cities. And you're supposed to use numbers as coordinates in graphing. And then you're supposed to graph those 5 locations like on a grid. So if we looked at these numbers, Athens is how much north? 37 degrees. And then how much east? 23 east. So we'll just write it like that, 37 north and 23 east. So if I was to make a grid, such as this, and we call that the origin, 0, 0. We still made that 0 degrees, 0 degrees. What would this horizontal axis be equivalent to on Earth? The equator. And what would the vertical axis be? Prime meridian, which goes through where? Well, it stretches from the north to the south pole, but geographically, where's the prime meridian? Does it go through the Atlantic or the Pacific?
Both.
Really? Doesn't the international date line go through the Pacific? Yes. Aren't you guys in geography this year?
No.
Was it last year?
Yeah.
Oh, that was then. This is now, huh? Okay, so here, this is the prime meridian, isn't it? It goes down through Greenwich, England, or something like that. Because if you think of time, there's different time zones. We're Alaska, and then there's Pacific, Mountain Time Zone, and Central Time Zone, and then Eastern Time Zone, and they keep going all the way back until you get to this, and then this is Greenwich time, the first time zone. So if you ever grab a GPS and you pick it up and you don't change it to Alaska time, you won't have the right time. It'll be off by a certain number of hours, however many time zones there are. I think like 8 between us and Greenwich. Something like that. How many time zones in the world?
Yeah.
How many hours in a day? 24, yeah, it'd be harsher if it wasn't. Boy, we'd be all mixed up every day. So anyway, prime meridian is here. That's 0 east and 0 west. So if you went to Athens, you would go over here to Greece, and you would go east. And if, up here, so down here, this would be Athens. And if you went west, you'd come over here like to New York. So if you think of this as the prime meridian, then this is east of it, and this is west of it. And if I went 23 degrees east, I might come out here like if this is 10, 20, 30. It would be about here, 23 east. And then if it's north of the equator, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. That'd be something like 37. So this would be Athens, approximately. And then what's another town? Well, these are all east, aren't they?
Yeah.
So then you don't even need this side of your graph. You only need this. Do we need anything south of the equator? No, everything's north. So what you're working with, where's my, oh, here they are. So what you're working with is just this much of your grid, just quadrant number 1. So is that enough to get the rest of them done for the question? Okay. 26. The North Star, Polaris. Where do you look to see the North Star at night? North, yes, that's what they call it, the North Star. Is it perfectly north?
No.
No, it's close though, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Which constellation is it a part of?
Orion's. belt.
0, I'm sorry. That's in the southern sky when we get to see it. The Big Bear. Ursa Major, yeah, Big Bear. And it's the pointer star off of the Dipper. So it is 4.08 times 10 to the 15th kilometers. And we're supposed to write this in, what, base 10 or standard notation? What do they say?
Decimal.
Decimal notation, all the same. Yeah, base 10, standard, decimal notation, same. Well, yeah, you just write it with all the zeros. So this is going to be, how many place values do we move?
15.
In which direction?
Right.
To the right, because we're making the number big. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 12, 13, 14, 15. Hi.
What comes after
Quadrillion.
trillion?
Quintillion in the United States, yes. So do they ask this for words or just decimal? Okay, so let's see here. This is million, right? Billion, trillion, or quadrillion. Or more commonly, because this is billion right here. Is that right? Yeah.
It was
More commonly, what we would call this, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, we would call this 4 million billion. And that's how that would be written, not quadrillion. 4 million in the billion place value.
wait. I got something different.
Okay, well, you go 15 places. We start from here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Number 28. We got to calculate 3.62, etc. 3.62 times 10 to the 4th minus 4.5 times 10 to the 5th divided by 15. Is this able to be done on a calculator? Do you need to, if you just look at it, would you need to put any grouping symbols in?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, and there's a negative.
There's a subtraction, isn't there?
Yeah.
But see, these are scientific calculators, and if you put the whole thing in as is, it's going to do all of this and all of this, and then subtract. It will follow order of operations. So if you just punch that in the way it is and you hit enter, you should get an accurate,
So how would we do it?
well, 3.62 times 10 raised to the 4th.
We don't know how to do Yeah, we don't. We
How
forgot.
do we get
Some of us
down?
don't. We forgot
How do we get down from a couch?
Oh, yeah, I said it once, but I'll say it again. So here's what we do. We do 3.62 times 10, and then the up arrow, the raised to the, and then 4. And then your exponent keeps blinking, right? So use the right arrow. Move yourself to the right, and it drops back down. And then you just do subtract. And just type in again, 4.5
Mine's not
times.
working
And then move your arrow over again, and then divide by 15.
I got it, okay.
It won't go down? Does it get little?
Okay, I got it.
There you go. So you put
Gonna
everything
work
up
on
in
your
the top.
calculator?
At the end, so you gotta use your, you wanna use your arrow over. While it drops back down. You guys okay entering it here, you want help? You okay here?
Oh, wait.
Living and making it work? Brooklyn? Pulling it out? Making it work? Violence? Phoenix? So I just keep typing that and track 4.5. What do you get?
That's
6,200. You're such an entertainer, man.
I got negative 500.
Yeah,
I got negative 50. I got negative 50,000. I didn't know the calculator. I got it.
Get 6,200? Are we getting 6,200?
I got negative 500. I got negative 53,000.
Whoa.
Negative 52,000. I really don't know. I don't know.
I got
Dang it.
Okay.
I did it in a power.
Refocus up here, please. Regarding something like this and working on the calculator, you can always calculate this first. And then make a new calculation where you do the 4.5 times 10 to the 5th divided by 15. So let me show you how to do that. Start with a clear screen. And try not to jump ahead thinking that you know where you're going with it, unless you really do know where you're going. But here's what I would do. Take 3.62 times 10 to the 4th, and hit enter. And you should have an answer of 36,200
Wait, just times 10.
to the 4th. Okay, then, new calculation. Do this here. 4.5 times 10 to the 5th. And then do the division. And you get 30,000. So now you can subtract, but now there's another way to subtract rather than just remembering what these are. Because if you look at your screen, you have both of your answers there. So what you should do then is use your up arrow and go up until this number is highlighted. Once it's highlighted, hit enter. And then use your arrow and go back up to this number until it is highlighted. Oops. You got to highlight this one, and then you have to hit subtract. I'm going to go back down. So I'm going to put a subtraction, and now I'm going to go back up until this number is highlighted. Hit enter. And then what it does is it brings your answers down. So you can calculate with those answers, and hit enter again, and you get your 6,200. So this thing stores all of your previous answers, and if you hit the up arrow and you just keep going, you'll see stuff that you did days ago. What's that? Right, if you delete those, then they're gone. You can't get them back. Like, I can go back, I've got hundreds and hundreds of calculations in mine, and I can go back and find any one of them. So you can retrieve old calculations with these calculators. All right, let's move on, because we have stuff to do with our graphing calculators. Any other questions on this homework? Okay, so we're going to take a look at lesson, yes? Right around the corner. It's not a great sharpener, but do your best. It's on the counter. To your left a little bit. Okay, so there are ways to create scatter plots. Line graphs, box and whisker plots, bar graphs. You do all kinds of things with these graphing calculators. What I'm going to show you today is a way to take data points and enter them into the calculator so it creates a scatter plot. So lesson 110. Okay, so they give us some data here in this activity, where they give it in two columns, like a T-table. And they say that the X value is going to be the age of a little kid named Trace. And this is going to be months. And then next to it, which is what is given, is a Y value. And this is the circumference of the child's head. And it's given in centimeters. So there's some tenths there. The age is in months. So the health of a baby can be measured a lot of different ways. And one piece of data that doctors pick from a baby when they go in for their checkups as they grow is they check head circumference. You want the head to be growing at the right rate. So if it's not, well, that's not discussed in this class. So we start out with birth, which is age 0. And then they've got 3, 6, 12, 15. Now, you don't have to write this down. If you just make note that this is on page 57. I can't be distracted like this. I can't imagine that others in the room can be productive if they're being distracted like this. Last call. So you don't have to write these if you don't want. You can just put down that we're on page 57 and refer to it. But I'm writing them up here so that I can point to them as we work. Oops, I missed something.
It's a 9 on the months.
9 months, oh boy, okay, I'm gonna squeeze 9 months in here. Is that the 45.3-ish? Sure enough it is. Oh, well, this would be a whole lot easier if I just did this. Wouldn't it be 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24. Then we're kind of okay. Thank you. Okay, so we want to take all of this and we want to make a graph. Well, normally what we would do is we would create a horizontal axis that went from 0 to 24. And then we create a vertical axis. But you know, we don't have to start at 0 because you know, we might do this. We might break it off and start out at 30 instead. Because you're probably not going to have a circumference of 5 for a baby's head. Not a baby human being, maybe a chicken. Yeah, turkey. So what I want to do is I want to create a scatter plot of these data points. So grab your calculator. And if you look in the middle, towards the top, there's something that says STAT, S-T-A-T. If we stop the writing, you can catch up with this later. I won't erase it. But pick up on your calculator, because this will be tough with 20 of you. STAT is in the middle, right where my finger is. So when you, STAT is short for statistics. So when you hit STAT, there's all kinds of statistics that can be done. Hit it once. It should read edit, calc, and tests. What we're going to do is we're going to edit. So hit enter. And what should pop up is should say L1, L2, L3, L4.
Mine doesn't do that.
Does anybody have numbers in those columns?
Me.
You do? Oops, sorry. You do? So use your up arrow in L1. If you have numbers in there, you can use your up arrow and hit clear. Hit enter. And then go over and up again. And hit clear and enter. Yeah, so you should have L1 and L2. I'd like you to work with L1 and L2 so we can at least all be talking the same things. So go into L1 and enter 3, or 0, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, all the way to 24. So 0, enter, 3, enter, keep doing that.
Do what?
Enter these values into L1. So all you do is hit 0, enter, and then each number enter. And then look at them and make sure that you've got each number in there the way you want it.
I have numbers.
Just so weird, mine are like.
In 0. Okay.
Uh-oh, I have numbers.
Mine are just really, when I put it in a number, like, they just go.
So put all of the numbers in.
Oh.
Then you hit enter and it shows up.
I have a number.
Well, all of the ones on the, and it's gonna show them all of them.
Not 18, 21, 22.
Oh,
Each
no.
number has a certain value. And you just keep it as you want.
Except for Y.
Are we okay here? So all okay here? Okay over here? Okay, so now you've got all of your X values in L1. List 1 is what that stands for. Go over to list 2 and add all your Y values. And pay attention that you enter them correctly, because if you don't, it's like this, garbage in, garbage out. You make a mistake entering something, you'll make a mistake with your results. This is right in the book. Are we there? Double check that you have the same number of entries in each, so they come up as ordered pairs.
Something went wrong. Like I somehow found like one extra number, but I went through and checked.
It's all good. Okay, leave it up.
What is the?
Stat, those are the keys. Stat, edit. That's to enter, to get to entering data, you get stat edit. That's how you get to L1, L2. Yeah, now we're gonna graph plots. I'm gonna give you a key sequence for that. So, again. Yeah, I don't have any cards right now for you to share data. And I'm not gonna have you guys sharing data right now. You can do that another day.
Sucking in.
But there is a way to take data from one and put it into another. Okay, so are we with this entered? I know you're still catching up, but the rest of us are. Okay, so we're gonna move forward. So we wanna graph this, and it takes a couple of steps. First of all, we have to tell the calculator which data we wanna graph, because you've got lots of lists, right? And you could have data in all of those lists, and you may or may not wanna graph it. And we need to say how big the graph is gonna look, because it can make, it can go to billions if you want on your X and your Y axes, and we've got to limit it to this kind of thing here. So first of all, to turn on graphing plots, here's what we do. We do the second key, and then the Y equals, upper left. And then the Y equals key is what we call stack plot. It's on the upper left-hand corner. Yeah. So you hit second, which is the blue one, and then you come up here to right above that, and that's Y equals. And then what you should have in front of you is stack plots, number 1, 2, 3, things like that. Yes? Okay. Then the question is, do they say that they're on or they're off? If they say that they're on, if plot 1 is on, and then 2 and 3 are off, you're probably okay. But I'm gonna walk you through everything anyway. If it says that it's off, we need to turn it on, and we need to tell it to pull the data from L1 and L2, and we need to tell it what kind of graph to make. Because it might make a bar graph or a line graph, and we don't want those things. We want a scatter plot. Okay, so second stat plot. Second y equals. So, are we on second y equals, and it says stat plots? So I'd like, with number 1 highlighted, I want you just to hit enter. Yeah, I know. It'll become second nature eventually. But at first it's slow. Okay, so now it's going to say on or off, and you want on to be blinking highlighted. Dark. And if you want it, you just hit enter to change it. Yeah, so when it's blinking on, hit enter. There you go, now that's on. So make it so on is dark. Second stop clock. Second right. Hit enter. Now you turn it on by hitting enter. Okay. Okay, now underneath where it says on off, it says type of graph or type. Second right.
Where's y equals?
There you go. You can hit the second first. Now hit enter. Because I turn plot 1 on.
Y equals.
And now hit enter again. Make it highlighted. There you go. Now we're talking about type. So now it says type, and there's 2 rows of shapes. And I'm trying to remember what you guys have. Turn it on. The first one looks like it's a scatter plot. And that's what should be highlighted. As long as it's highlighted, you don't have to hit enter. It would be, right now yours is dark, so it's highlighted. Right, because if you hit enter, then that becomes dark. Then you go back and that becomes dark. And then you have something that says X list and Y list. And X list and Y list need to read L1 and L2.
X list should be what?
Yeah, X list is L1. And your Y list is going to be list number 2. Yes? Give me a thumb which way you are. Are you there?
Wait, y list should be highlighted?
The Y list will be L2. And the X list should read L1. How's Miranda and Ariel?
Can you enter the L1 and L2?
Yeah,
It's not there?
for example, if X list is not L1, move your arrow, with your arrows, move down until L1, whatever's there is blinking. And then you do second and the number 1, and that turns it into L1. And then you move down and do second and L2. And then you have the mark choice. You can have a square, you can have a plus sign, you can have a dot. Whatever you want. Make it big. Big is better today. Don't change it. Second. Like that. How are we doing? Are you good?
I accidentally hit the plus, no, I'm not, I accidentally tapped the plus sign and it all disappeared, so I don't know.
Second step left. Second, the Y equals.
There's scatter.
Yeah, L1, L2. You got big markings? You good? You good?
Wait, what's the marking? Oh, that's also a mark on the plot.
How are you? Are we? How are we doing over here, Willow? You got everything? Haines, you there? Amanda, Ariel?
Yeah, wait, we're supposed to select this one, right?
Yeah, scatter plot, the very first one.
How did you do that?
Okay, so now you have this plot turned on. So this is what mine looks like. I'm not sure if anybody's gonna be looking at this, but we changed the X list to L1 and the Y list to L2 by using the second and then these different numbers down here. You can see in blue what the second function is for those. Okay, now we need to create a graph, but we have to have the right axes dimensions. So we have to tell the graphing calculator to go from like 0 to 24 for sure. And you know what I'm going to say? I'm going to say we should make it a little bigger. Let's go from 0 to 30. But then we're going to make it so that every mark is going to be 3. 3 more. So the interval is going to be 3. And then vertically, we don't need to start at 0. I think if we start at 30 and we go to maybe 60, because we're going a little further in months, we need to go a little longer or a little greater in circumference. So we're going to make this go from 30 like up to, let's say, 60. And I'm going to say we're going to break this off. This interval is going to be a 5. And down on the bottom, we're going to do a 3. So this is going to take a few steps.
What's the triangle for?
Delta, the change. So the change as we go across is going to be 3s. The change here is going to be 5s. Okay, so now I'll tell you. Okay, so if you look at the very, very top, there's 5 keys that go across the top. There's the Y equals, there's the window, zoom, trace, and graph. And if you look above the window, it says TBL set. Above window, it says TBL set. That's table settings. If you go to the zoom and up above that, that ends up being format. Oh shoot, I turned off. And what we want to do is we want to just go to the window. Because if we look at this, this is called the window. So now we're gonna set the graph size. So you're gonna go to window, and it's gonna have a lot of information. Yep, just click window. And it's gonna say window, X min, X max, X SCL, which stands for scale, Y min, Y max, Y scale, and then the rest of it we'll understand in another 5 years. Okay, so you just go to window, and what we're going to do is we're going to do an X minimum of 0. You just move your arrow down and type 0, and then we're going to do a max of 30. You can overwrite. You can just overwrite. Just have it highlighted and then type what you want and hit enter. And then the Y, we're going to go from 30 to 60. So this will be the Y max. This will be the Y min. Now there's a little bit more. The SCL, that's this right here. So we're going to change the y-axis by 5s. So this is going to be Y SCL. And the right here, this is going to be the X scale, SCL. And then when you're done with that, you just hit graph.
So put 5 to YCL.
Okay, now it's time to go.
So the first one is going to
And then the last thing you do is you just graph.
take a graph.
Yeah, and if you did it right, it'll show up. If it says error, then you gotta go back and change your scale. You got it.
Wait, what's the X? Oh, boo,
They're right up there in the upper right in purple.
I got.
All up in the upper right hand corner.
Well, yes, and then like
That's
what's
the
that?
scale. Oh, that's, you'll learn about that in yours.
Oh, okay, then I just press enter.
Can you try to explain it to me right now?
And then just press
Good
enter.
job. Good job.
Is there a one?
Where's that? Why not?
Don't worry about that, that's a resolution.
Look at that. No, nothing. You just press that. Okay, cool. That was way too What is yours? Okay, never mind.
Oh, turn on. Hit graph.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, what? Whoa, that's so strong. Oh, stop it. I think I might have.
What am I gonna do now? Like after that, like how much is my work in that? You're just like find what kind of longer there's.
You guys have to move around.
Yeah.
I hit graph and then it said in the top.
760. I hit click, and then it does that.
I didn't realize I had that.
Well, it's probably there.
60 is like.
It's either from a previous graph that we will still show, or it's something we wouldn't say. I know it's scatterplots, there is a line that you can write in scatterplots, but I can't remember the name. So it might be that. Does yours have even a line? Okay, so it must be like from the previous that we just did.
Next step.
So you got a graph? You got a graph.
Yeah.
You have it. And we have it up here. All right. And you have it. And Ryland's really close. And you guys, you have it now? Emma, you're there? All right. And Ruben, you're good. All right, that's pretty huge. Oh, well, that's not very huge then. We're gonna go bigger than that.
Is the postage card numbers on it? Okay, and then it can tell you these are. And then it tells you the, like,
The line that is 30 and the line that is 60.
Yeah, you should charge.
Okay. What time are you guys out of here?
11:30 for sure.
Really?
I think.
Wow. 4:35.
11:35. Ryan keeps error.
Okay, Eric, Ryan is there.
Yeah.
Where do you find that? Well, you're in L1 and L3.
Oh, I get my homework done.
L2 is not there, that's L2. So we're gonna go to staff on and change this one to pick up L3. Okay, because you don't have L2 in there.
Depending on. Oh, I know.
Do a little wait.
Am I doing it right?
That person that goes down.
Exactly.
Oh, plus, she's also trying to pull them
Finding ways not to.
through. I got
Oh, that takes it long. So, why don't you?
all right. Okay, so now, with that graph up, if you look at the top row of keys, where the Y equals window, zoom, trace. Hit trace. And use your arrows left and right, and you'll go from point to point. And you will be able to look at the ordered pair that made that point. It's written on the bottom. You'll say X equals Y equals. Not hit trace and then the arrows left and right. You can move through your graph, point to point.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's a dot, there's a dot at 0, isn't there? That was birth. And that's gonna be 35.8, I believe. So you're able to trace the function?
Yes.
You guys able to trace it? We're able to trace over here? All right, happy days.
Dave.
All right, 1 to 4, 6, 8 to 10, 26.
Why are you guys nobody's staring at you? No, they are staring at you. Not even looking at you. Somebody's looking at you. There you are. Then look away. Look at your work. Why are you looking at her? She's looking at me. Yeah, so look away.
Oops, that's 8 to 10.
So should I get make girl hair? Yeah. Yes. Do it. All right, do it. Where are we going from?
Come on. I'm gonna put Orion in the front row. Hey. Isn't it funny? I get your attention, I get everybody else's at the same time. All right. So here's your homework, 1 through 4, number 6, 8 through 10, and number 26. When you enter things into the graphing calculator and work with them, if you get really frustrated with it, just set it down. If you get really frustrated with it, that it's bothering you, just set the thing down. And keep in mind, if you want to try to do something, and you wish to dig up how to do it on the internet, you can just Google TI-84 and any question that you can imagine this calculator doing, and there will be steps out there for you. So if all you want to do is enter data into lists, and you forget how to do it, you can Google it. I wrote a couple of things here. Stat edit second, and the y equals for stat plot, and the window. Those are really the three things that you're using right now. Really. Transition, you're not algebra 1 yet. Yours is going to be transition. Your sister can help you. Your sister can help you. Your sister can help you. Your brother's not here. Okay, your sister can help you. Your sister can help you. Sylvia, your brother might be able to help you. Naked Doris said she has to. So when we set up how wide and how tall our graph was, those were the dimensions. And we used these numbers. We said, oh, well, we're going to make our dimensions from 0 to, but, you know, sometimes you go a little bit bigger just to make it, the graph look nicer instead of pressing it right on the edge. But these are the dimensions. So these are the dimensions right here. Would you like me to show you how you write the dimensions short and sweet so you don't have to write them long and detailed? Here. When we did our dimensions for the head circumference, this is what we did. These were the x values. And they went from 0 to 30. And if you write this with two inequalities that are less than or equal to, this reads 0 is less than or equal to x is less than or equal to 30. And then the y, we made ours go from 30 to 60, and we use the less than or equal. So if we were going to say what our dimensions were for this graph that we did with the head circumference, this is one way that we could write it in kind of shorthand. It's a whole lot easier than writing out all the words. So the x goes from 0 to 30, and the y goes from 30 to 60. And we always use less than or equal to for each of those.